Hello and welcome to Fireside Chat number 50. I am Brian and I'm joined by my very special guest, Elizabeth Hobson. Elizabeth is a stay-at-home mother and a libertarian anti-feminist. She is a member of the Liberty Bells, which is a group of British women that work that make videos that challenge feminist narratives in partnership with Studio Brule or Brule. I always get that. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it. I think it's Brule, but whenever I say
Brulee,
Brule,
yeah.
yeah, I think of like, creme brulee.
Creme
And
brulee, yeah.
so yeah, but I guess that's right. So yeah, we work
Uh-huh.
working with him. So hello, Elizabeth. How are you?
Very good, very good. Thank you very much. I'm pleased that we're number 50. That's a lovely round number, isn't it?
It is. It's a great number. I was just thinking that when I was putting it in, I was like, oh look, she's number 50. That's cool.
Yeah, it's a nice
Um,
milestone for you.
yeah,
How
it
does it
is.
feel to be at number 50?
It actually feels pretty good. Wait, who's being interviewed here? No, it does. It feels really good. I'm glad that we can get this many conversations, and I hope that we have many, many more. So yeah, number 50 is not even getting warmed up for us. So so how Elizabeth, how did you find yourself blogging about men's issues, making videos? Why did you want to do this?
Okay, shall we go back to the very beginning?
Yes, let's go back to the beginning.
I mean, basically, I think that I've instinctively always been passionate about justice and equality. And so for a long time, I assumed that that made me a feminist. And I was sort of thinking back today to my very sort of first thoughts on the issue. And I was remembering maybe when I was about 14 and we learned about the suffragettes in school.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking what a sort of biased impression we got because, I remember we learned that they fought for our right to vote. Um, and I remember that
Some
they,
would say that suffragettes died for the right to vote. That there are you learn that in academia, even though I think there's only one woman who died, and it was because she basically threw herself in front of a
herself in front of a horse.
in front of a horse.
Yeah. Yeah, you see, I don't think we learnt about that. I know we learnt that they chained themselves to buildings and that they were arrested and went on hunger strike in prison.
Mm-hmm.
But we were never told how violent they were. We were
Mm-hmm.
never told about the bombs. We were never told about the plots to assassinate our prime minister. And it's like, I was just thinking today, I was thinking, why? Why is that? You know?
Yeah.
But I'm diverging. Shall I go off on this tangent or should I pull it back? What do you think?
No, no, diverge. Go ahead. Go off on the tangent.
Okay. Well, then I started thinking that it's not just feminism, is it? It's we also learnt about the slave trade and we learnt an incredibly biased kind of story of slavery as well. We were never told that actually everyone in the world, every sort of country and nationality has at one point in time, had slaves,
Of
and
course.
most of them have been slaves as well.
Yes.
We were certainly never told about, the Muslim slave trade in the Middle East and how barbaric that was and how there were far more people involved, far more victims. Um, and so, I think the joining thread there between those two issues, the suffragettes and the slave trade, is like we've found a way of teaching it where we can blame white men.
Yes, and then you have to ask because I ended up asking this once I found out all these things was why was the education system telling me only half of the story or a certain
Mm-hmm.
facet without giving me the full context, like when we talk about slavery, why is it we don't there is no real discussion about how global it was and how basically at one point in history every nation or every ethnicity or every people has been enslaved at one point, and it was almost like it's just sort of part of being a human being living in a world that essentially is just it's savagery everywhere. Everyone's just fighting for survival, and that means that other people get screwed in the process. But that's not really the way it was put forward when I learned about it in school, that this was just like a part of the human condition, and that we today, as what I would consider to be more enlightened people, can look back at that and say, well, this is not something that only a certain kind of person can be prone to doing. This is something that we all as human beings are essentially it's almost like we're in a constant state of fighting against that. But I mean, it just so happens that we, live in a modern enough time that we can look back on the way things were and objectively say, yes, this happened, but we live here now, and so we can make the world better. Instead of focusing on, things like inherited guilt and shame for, belonging to the wrong race or the wrong gender, for that matter. Because that's what feminism does, right? It blames men as a group for all of the suffering in the world, and it judges the value of any society or culture based on how it treats its women.
Absolutely, and in order to do that, they have to lie and obfuscate. So, they have to present the story of enfranchisement in a way that is dishonest. It has to be women fought for the right to vote. They don't tell you that, well, actually, the 1918 Representation of the People Act in the UK that enfranchised 8 million women with some sort of property qualifications actually brought in 5 million men as well who previously couldn't vote. And they have to lie like this to maintain the narrative of women as victims and men as oppressors, because that's where they get their power from.
Yeah. And I don't know about in the UK, maybe you can shed some light on this, but here in the US, before we gave the women the vote, the way that voting worked was if men wanted to vote, they either had to own property or they had to be conscripted. And when you are conscripted to war, you risk your life just so that you can have a say. Women were given the vote without the need for conscription.
Right. It was almost the same here.
Yeah.
Except that being conscripted didn't give you the right to vote, and so in the First World War, you had so many men going off to die, and they didn't have the right to vote, and they wouldn't have whether they came back or not.
Yeah, that's messed up. On top of that, you had the white feather campaign and stuff too, for the men that didn't go and put their lives in danger, right? Which I think the suffragettes were a part they were involved with. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so you say
that was their effort in the war.
Yeah. Guilting men to go kill themselves to protect them. So I'm sorry, you were telling me how you got here. So you said that it was the stuff that you learned in school and you started to question it.
Well, no, I didn't start to question that for a long time. Let's go back to when I was 14 and we learned about the suffragettes in school. And probably around the same time, I saw Germaine Greer on TV. And the only sort of part of the interview I remember is her saying, people say to me that they're not feminists. And I say, well, don't you believe in women's rights or something like that? And I remember thinking yeah, that's so right. She's spot on the money there. And I kind of internalized that and then went and got on with my life. And my life consisted of, between the ages of kind of 14 and 19, getting really drunk and stuff like that and having a really good time. So I wasn't paying much attention to kind of feminism or anti-feminism or any of that. But I suppose if anyone would have asked me, I would have said, yeah, I'm a feminist, yeah. And then I became pregnant with my first son. And I had this kind of this feeling of this bond with all the women in the world, because we all go through childbirth and it's amazing. And, this was kind of extended to the natural world. So I was reading an awful lot of books by David Attenborough and watching his films and stuff like that as well. But I was also starting to pick up feminist literature. And then I started talking to feminists kind of online and at events, and it wasn't that long into that process that I started to realize that actually my ideas weren't that welcome in feminism. And, even though kind of my ideas more closely resembled the sort of dictionary definition of feminism.
What kind of ideas? Can you give me some examples?
Well, just equality, basically, that people are equal and that people are equally responsible as well.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, so equal, yeah, of course, equal rights comes down to equal responsibility or
And
accountability.
also, kind of I was into the whole sort of freedom thing, that sort of was fought for and gained in the 60s. So I'm thinking of kind of Camille Paglia when she says that, at university, the boys didn't have a curfew, but the girls all had a curfew. And they went to the deans of the university and said, we want to stay out as long as we want. And they said, no, you can't, you'll be raped. And they said the price of freedom is risking rape. That was kind of what I was into.
Yeah. Do you think, I'm going on a little bit of a tangent. We'll come back to your path in a second. When Camille Paglia has some pretty great ideas, I like her a lot, but she still calls herself
She's
a feminist.
very likable.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
She still calls herself a feminist. Do you ever think to yourself, when I think about her and Christina Hoff Sommers, sometimes I ask myself if they are still feminists because they are trying to save the label, or if that is one of the sort of branches or flavors of feminism, if you will.
I don't really feel like it's one of the branches or flavors of feminism. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but I mean, they're completely ostracized by the movement. They're such far outliers.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
mean, Paglia, she says that she's like a first wave feminist.
Mm-hmm.
Is what she says. She also, in the 70s, Gloria Steinem called her the anti-feminist, which when I heard that, I wasn't anti-feminist at this point, and I heard that and I was just like, yes, that is fantastic. I can really, I love that.
Well, I was just going to say, my thinking is this. I think that Camille Paglia and Christina Hoff Sommers call themselves feminists to piss off real feminists. It's like a troll, so they can say maybe they were at one point, maybe they thought of their sort of version of feminism was a real thing at the time, like when they were younger, and now they see where it's gone, but they don't want to let go, so instead they just keep using the term, especially Christina Hoff Sommers, who says the factual feminist, which sounds like an oxymoron, specifically to rustle the jimmies of current wave feminists, whatever they are.
Yeah, I mean, that's one sort of conspiracy theory. I kind of think that they've just got their own feelings when they hear that word, and so Paglia is associating it with the kind of, well, I say the first wave. We've already complained about the first wave somewhat, haven't we? But, I think they've got each other as well. There are kind of good things to associate the word with if you try, and I tend to think that they have these good associations, whereas if you're coming into the whole gender politics equality kind of movement now, there is very little that's positive to see in feminism.
But
I don't know, I mean, maybe that was always true, because in the sort of 60s when they were in their heyday, you had all the kind of sex negative feminists, like, who's the really crazy one, really fat bushy hair?
Andrea Dworkin.
Andrea Dworkin, yeah, that kind of stuff was going on, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. I didn't Germaine Greer, I think I could be wrong, but wasn't she the one that said you're either a feminist or you're a bigot? There's no difference. I think that's the one that said that. But there's a lot of them. Anyway, we're off topic. I just wanted to say that because I think about Camille and Christina Hoff Sommers. I really like them a lot. So, but okay. So I'm sorry. You're 14 years
So,
old.
no, I've got older. I've
Okay.
become pregnant with my first
Oh,
child,
right.
haven't
Yeah,
I?
yes. You have your son on the
And I've
way, and
and I've started to talk to feminists and get into the literature and discovered that it's not quite what I imagined.
do you think you were thinking
Um,
about your son at the time? Like
well, I
that
didn't know
was.
I
Oh, you didn't know you had a son coming.
no, but then I'm trying to think. I think I probably was a feminist after I'd had him for a little while. Um, but I mean, at the same time as I was falling out of, um, you know,
Mm-hmm.
not getting on with the label and getting told by feminists to hand in my feminist card and all this kind of stuff, I started meeting MRAs and anti-feminists online. One of whom, one of the very first people I met, is a woman called Catherine, who's one of the Liberty Bells.
Mm-hmm.
She's at Female Fed Up with Feminism on Twitter, which is where I met her. And they started showing me better information and better ideas. And they were nicer people who had similar values to me. So there was, you know what, I actually meant to go onto my blog today and find out when I wrote this piece, because there's this piece that I wrote that's kind of a tombstone, and it was called Why Every Feminist Should Also Be an MRA. And I kind
Uh-huh.
of published that. And I think like the next day I'd go, you know what, I can't keep up being a feminist.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't. So I sort of called myself an MRA for a while, and then I came to feel um, a little more Fiedelbergian. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you know
I
Fiedelbergian.
yes, I do. Yes, I
Uh,
do.
he's got a great quote, which is, "You can't help men without wrecking feminism,"
Mm-hmm. Well,
which I concur with. And so
and okay,
for quite a long time now, I've been simply an anti-feminist.
right. Now let me ask you this. I want to. I'm curious to see what your mindset is on it. We at Honey Badger Radio, some of us are strictly MRAs, some of us are anti-feminists first, some of us are MRAs first, some of us are a blend of the two. Which, so you say that you find yourself more anti-feminist. So that quote that you said, "You can't help men without
Mm-hmm.
wrecking feminism." Um,
Mm-hmm.
why do you think that? Like, what do you think in your mind? Why do you think that it's necessary that feminism has to be sort of um, combated or taken down or what have you? Why do you think it's the obstacle?
They're just so entrenched in all these positions of power and influence in government, in the media, in education, in the civil service, in the social
In
services.
the entertainment industry, in, as you said, social services, psychiatric care,
Yeah,
therapy, the
yeah.
courts. Yes.
So, yeah, they're supremely powerful,
Mm-hmm.
and they've got that. They've also got the sort of power over the hearts and minds of the public through like 100 years of feminist propaganda.
Yeah.
So that, for example, there was a debate in our parliament recently about this bill, and this bill is to it's called, what's it called? I have got it written down really close. It's colloquially known as the Honour Killings Bill, and it rules out the term. Here we go. Right. It's called the Crime (brackets aggravated murder of and violence against women) close brackets bill. So it outlaws the term honour killings because there's nothing honourable about murder. Um, Requires British authorities to prosecute those who beat and murder British women abroad, help bring back the women, or pay for the repatriation of bodies of those murdered. Right?
Mm-hmm.
This was being discussed, and an MP called Philip Davies, do you know him?
Yes, yes. Well, I met him at the ICMI, and we've been trying to get him on, but he's extremely busy. But yes, I know who
Oh,
Philip Davies is.
well, I hate to tell you, but he has agreed to talk to the Liberty Bells. He's given us dates and everything.
See, that's what us in the Honey Badger Radio call gynocentrism. That's the reason. Just throwing it out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, but he stood up and said, the bill is great and I completely agree with all of the aims, but what about the 24% of victims who are male? Can we not make it gender neutral? And the entire parliament jeered at him and booed him and were like shouting at him and, passed the bill. It was only in its sort of first reading, I think, but they passed it unanimously apart from him. And the thing is, it caused no public outrage either.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the institutional power, because, you've got Nusra Ghani, who calls herself a feminist, proposing this bill. And then you've got all of the other MPs who've all been to university and been indoctrinated into feminism, just accepting it blindly. And then you've got the power over hearts and minds of society, meaning that nobody's pissed off about it.
Yeah.
And then we had the exact same thing with the Istanbul Convention a couple of days ago. Or pushing a week ago now.
Sometimes I think that politicians, and I don't know how it works over there in the UK, but sometimes I think that politicians, in many cases, they know that a lot of feminism is bullshit. But I think they know that most people don't know that, and it gets them elected, and so they use it. Appealing to women is super effective, is what I'm saying.
I was at a debate last October with a guy called Martin Daubney, who sort of does a lot of writing for Telegraph Men. He's a really good guy.
Is that the guy? I met him at ICMI too. I know who is he, the porn guy? Does he talk about he used to run a porn magazine? Or
yes.
Okay, so yes, that's right, yes.
Yeah. But he said he'd been into Parliament and he'd been talking to people about how white boys were really struggling in school. And he said that the sort of MPs that he was talking to were really, had a lot of compassion for what he was saying. They're very sympathetic, but they said, like, listen, there's nothing we can do because we're going to face resistance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they possibly do, a lot of them know that it's all bullshit, but they're not willing or able to combat it, apart from Philip Davies.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, Philip Davies is a hero in my eyes. He's right up there. He's a good man. Okay, so let's see. I had another question. Oh yeah, let's talk about male genital mutilation. You did a video recently. I'm actually gonna get the link from you and put it in the low bar so everyone else can watch it, where you talked at length about male genital mutilation, or as more commonly known, circumcision. And you seemed really well versed in the history and the culture surrounding it globally. Well, first of all, how did you do all that research, and what made you interested in it? I'm assuming that you have a son, and is he circumcised?
I've got 2 sons.
Okay.
And they're both intact.
Okay.
Which is, unsurprising, because in Britain it's like sort of 6% are circumcised or something. It's very small. It's, they don't ask you about it in the hospital. Nobody assumes that you would.
Oh, well, that's okay, because in the U.S. it's pretty normal to circumcise, and that's something that...
Well, in the US it's 50-50, and it varies state to state. So some states, virtually no one is circumcised, and in some states, virtually everyone is. But, it's going down steadily, and you're at the tipping point now. It's going to become a minority very soon. It might be a minority now.
Yeah, it might be. I know it varies from culture to culture within the U.S. So, for example, I'm Puerto Rican, which means my family comes from a very small island that is owned by the U.S. called Puerto Rico. It's in the Caribbean. And Puerto Ricans generally never circumcise their kids. And it's not for anti-religious or reasons or anything. They just, when I asked my mother about it, because I didn't really realize the pros or cons at the time, I just realized that I wasn't circumcised. whereas other men were. And I asked why I wasn't, and she said I didn't see a reason to do it. So it's not as though she's aware of, the problems that come with it. It was just a cultural thing they didn't do. So I'm lucky for that, because I've heard some really messed up stories about circumcisions gone wrong. So anyway, we're back on the male genital mutilation. So what made you interested in it, and how did you come to find out all the info you got?
Well, I suppose, around the same time as I was going through that period of not being a feminist anymore and becoming an anti-feminist, was the same time, maybe was it like 5 years ago or something, that there was a big fuss being made about FGM. And that was like, the big story, and we managed to get it, a law against it in our country and all this kind of stuff. And, at the same time as that was going on, which obviously, of course I support, but I was also becoming aware of male genital mutilation, which, because of where I'm from, I'd only been very dimly aware. I was dimly aware that circumcision happened to men, for most of my life, but I'd never really thought about it. And then all this stuff was happening with FGM. And it just seemed, I've already said, I'm instinctively kind of drawn to equality and justice. And so it just seemed very natural to me. They're both the same. They're completely comparable. And why is there not an uproar about, male genital mutilation?
Well, not only is there, I don't know about the UK, but in the US, people don't see a problem with a circumcised man at all. Not if you showed them a video of a newborn getting circumcised, they would immediately become anti-circumcision. That would be enough to change anybody's mind. That was the most powerful part, probably, of Cassie Jay's documentary, was the video she showed of the circumcision. But when people usually think about circumcision in the U.S., unless they are aware of what the risks are that come with it and all that, they generally have no response, either for or against. And a lot of times people are for because they think it's aesthetically better. And they think it's basically like piercing your ear or getting a tattoo. Like it just, they don't know that there's so much more to it in most cases. So.
Well, I think there's also a fair amount. I don't like to bring it up in conversations when I'm trying to convert people, but I think that there is an awful lot of denial that goes on, whether it's people who've circumcised their own children or people who are circumcised. They're just completely unwilling to hear.
Oh yeah, I have a friend.
That it's abuse.
I have a very, very old friend, and he has a son who's about 13 years old now. And when I learned about the problems with circumcision, I wanted to tell him about it, but I knew that he had his kid cut already because he married a Jewish woman, and that's just what they do. So I know that the kid, actually I know because I was invited when for the bris, I think is when they actually do the circumcision.
Yeah, that's
and
right. Yeah.
I didn't go, but like they made this as an event. Everyone goes, and then like the baby gets cut. And to this day, I haven't told him about what he, what they did to his son actually could, because he has some psychological issues. Like he's autistic, pretty far on the spectrum, and he's a high maintenance child. And I wonder, because I know that circumcision leaves, well, that circumcision can have significant effects on the child. And they don't forget. I mean, they may not have like the visual memory, but their body remembers that pain. So, and
absolutely,
I'm afraid to tell my friend because I know that he will have such a negative reaction to the knowledge that he essentially allowed that to happen. there was a viral video a while back of a activist that was arguing. He had a camera on his person, and he is arguing with a man that ran into him on the street as he was protesting circumcision. And the man he was arguing with was a father and had a son, and over the course of their discussion, the father who was fighting with this guy had essentially, he fought with him, and he actually got violent and struck the man, and the reason was because the father had come to the realization that he circumcised his own child, and as a result of that he made a bad choice essentially, and he was so upset that he lashed out violently. But the thing is, it's, well, maybe you can shed some light or give another perspective on it. It can be difficult to talk to parents about the importance of leaving their baby boys intact, and you can make a very strong case for it, but once they've already done it, then they turn it into a personal attack, and it also fills them with an immense amount of remorse because they have made there's no going back, basically, right? So how do you
Well,
do that?
I mean, yeah, that's true, but then some of our greatest allies in the fight against it are regret mums.
Mm-hmm.
They're sort of famously very emotive speakers on the subject, and regret dads as well. And there's a guy on who's done some YouTube videos, and he's written a book, who had his children circumcised before he sort of had realized what he was really doing.
Yeah.
So, it's worth it for the benefit of humankind trying to get through that barrier. But yeah, it's a very difficult
For
one.
sure.
And especially, if it's a personal friend, obviously you don't want to ruin your relationship at the same time.
Yeah, but I think, a lot of times, well, I think that they may come back around once they've dealt with the pain of that knowledge. It's sort of like, the red pill rage in a way, right? Someone in the chat asked, and I'm going to let you answer, because I'd like to hear what you have to say. They want to know what the drawbacks of circumcision are. They must be one of our more recent listeners, because
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, what I would advise is that person goes and has a look at Tim Hammond's Global Survey of Circumcision Harm, which is the largest survey of its kind. There was 1,000 men asked about their experiences. And I've got a list here. So if you don't mind me
nope, not at
doing a
all.
bit of reading. Participants to this study reported suffering from a myriad of harms, including 10% had partial or total loss of the penile body, 56% had little to no shaft skin mobility on erection, 45% had hair along the mid to upper shaft causing friction during sex, 67% reported an insensitive glans. That's from a process called keratinization. It happens when it's unprotected, when the glans is unprotected and it rubs against clothing. 75% reported the dry keratinized glans, which required lubricants before sex. 31% reported erectile dysfunction, with circumcised men being 4.5 times more likely to take pharmaceuticals for erectile dysfunction. 6% reported penile bleeding during sex. 8% that the scar is painful. 27% that the scar is numb. And then you get to the emotional damage. So we had 71% reporting anger, 72% reporting frustration, 37% reporting shame. This is a very sort of emotive one for me. 55% felt betrayed by a lack of protection from harm by the mother. 50% betrayed by lack of protection from harm by the father. 73% that their human rights were violated. 62% reported that their condition impedes their sexual relationships. 32% that it adversely affects their relationship with the mother. 29% that it adversely affects the relationship with their father. 65% that it causes them to distrust the medical profession. 33% that it causes them to feel unsafe in their society. And 36% have sought help for the harm that they've been subjected to. Now, obviously, this survey by the very nature of it being the global survey of circumcision harm, may well have been self-selecting. So, these numbers
Oh, I
are
see what you're
huge,
saying.
but they
These
could well,
numbers,
it could well mean that it's actually a minority who are experiencing this kind
right?
of stuff. But still, in my opinion, that's far, far too many. And if it was, a minority of women suffering from these things from FGM, we wouldn't be sitting having a discussion over whether actually it's kind of all right, which is what you get into when you show people these numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for those people who don't know what when she says self-select, this means that the men who are most likely suffering from some side effects are the ones that take the survey, whereas there is probably a majority of men who have been circumcised that don't have any symptoms that didn't bother taking the survey. However, that doesn't, and as to your point, Elizabeth, that does not mean that male genital mutilation is something that we shouldn't be talking about and trying to eliminate, because if this was female genital mutilation, there would be no discussion about whether or not this is okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've got nothing against genital mutilation per se. If it's an 18-year-old, I don't care what they want to do to their body, even if it's incredibly foolish and likely to lead to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
not very good outcomes. It's the fact that it's done to children who can't consent that really fucks me off.
Yeah. And your boys that you have now, how old are they?
7 and 4.
Ooh, okay, very young. Uh, the so let me ask you this, because you do have two sons, and you're educating them, I imagine. Do you guys have feminist academia in the same way that we likely do in the West? Like, does it sort of is it in your
You mean at their
schools?
school? It's
Yes.
in our school. Um, he did come home once with a sort of this paper satchel, like school satchel, with a little pocket on it. And when I opened it up and started pulling things out, it was all little notes written about all girls should have the right to an education and all this kind of stuff, which I was like, oh, about. But that's all I've actually experienced. And also, our school took on 4 male teachers last year. So I suspect our school's kind of one of the good ones. And
Oh,
I think the whole feminist thing is going to start becoming more apparent in high school and university,
yeah.
to be honest.
Well,
But I
that's good.
mean, my boys are going to be all right because although I try very hard not to indoctrinate them into my way of thinking, and so I do a lot of listening to honey badgers and stuff like that. And I always make sure I'm out of earshot of them, partly
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want to indoctrinate them, partly because I don't want them to hear the word rape. To be perfectly honest, it crops up quite a lot.
Which
Um,
word?
Rape.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Mm.
we do end up having to talk about that a lot.
But I was giving the boys a bath not so long ago, and my eldest said to me, "Mum, you know the Titanic?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, it was women and children first." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, that's unfair because men and women should be the same." And I was
Mm.
like, "Yes, they should. They should." And I was like, "And you know what? It's still the same. It's outrageous, isn't it?"
That's right.
But yeah, I was absolutely made up. That's like one of the proudest moments of my life. And not long after that, my youngest announced that he liked Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin. And I was just like, I'm doing this right.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good. That's good. I'm glad. Okay, good. Uh, are you in or work with? Oh, aside from the Liberty Bells, are there any other men's groups that you work with or that you are a part of in the UK or anywhere for that matter?
Um, I've got a network of sort of people who I do bits of work with.
Mm-hmm.
There's a young man called Jordan who is really, really helpful for me. he helped me with a lot of research for the debate we had the other day, and he's always keeping me on sort of in the loop with things that are going on. But to be honest, in the UK, it's just a really close-knit kind of community we've got going on
Yeah.
generally.
Definitely when I was up there, I realized that it's a smaller country than I thought. I don't know why I thought it was bigger. I just had this but you know, the whole of Britain, you can just sort of cross in a car, like right in like a day.
Oh yeah,
So
well, yeah,
Yeah,
pretty
that's a,
much.
to be honest, that's quite the Doge sequitur, I would say. You were talking about the UK community being tight knit, and Brian went, "Oh, your country is small,
well, I'm
very
saying
small."
it's easier to make it a tight knit country if it's
Ah,
small.
okay, I
That's
see,
my
I see.
point. Okay,
Okay,
so
I'll
Elizabeth,
go
this
lurk
is
away.
Allison. She just popped in real quick to talk crap
Hello,
about me.
Alison. I wondered who it was.
Oh, hi, Elizabeth.
I saw you
Yeah,
pop up.
yeah. I thought Brian was getting a little too comfortable here,
Mm.
so I just decided to slip in and make trouble, as it were. Yeah. So, but thank you for coming on the show, Elizabeth. Um,
Pleasure to be here.
and
Nice to
thank you
meet
for.
you.
It's nice to meet you as well.
Mm.
You're on Steve Brulet's channel, right? Liberty Bells.
Yeah, we will be. We
Okay, you
haven't
will be.
really. We're waiting. We filmed our videos and we're waiting for them to be produced by Steve and his son.
Ah, okay,
Should
gotcha.
happen pretty soon.
Yeah, hopefully, and we'll
Mm.
be able to see that. So we should probably put a link to Steve Brulet's channel so we make sure that people are directed there for when the Bells make their debut.
Will do.
Yes. I don't. I actually wasn't able to listen to the interview up to this point because me and Karen are working on some updates to our current fundraiser to get to Washington D.C. It's suddenly become a hell of a lot more complex because the Canadian television, the National Television Network has just dumped something on our laps, which we'll be announcing shortly. But I did want to say hi and welcome you to our channel before. Anyway, awkward segue now.
Okay. And thanks for that word from our sponsors. Now, Allison is are you still here? She's still here. That's okay.
Yeah,
Feel
I'm
free to
just
lurk.
cringing at my own humiliation.
It's okay. I'm gonna go on to the next question in the meantime, but you chill out if you want to. Okay, so men's groups, you're working with lots of people. That's cool. Do you think that more and more people are like kind of like getting on board with this? Do you think that it's sort of growing? And I've noticed a
You know,
grow in interest, but I don't know.
yeah, you know what? Like, I just keep saying to everyone, like, do you think we're at a turning point? Do you think we're at a turning point? And everyone's saying yes. I met Paul Elam not long ago, and I said it to him, and he said, "Yeah, I do feel like that." And Swayno Pie, he said the same thing. John Waters is an Irish guy who not many people know, but he's really, really cool. And
Mm-hmm.
he said the same thing. It's like a lot of things are going on, and I think that the Red Pill movie is both a kind of marker of this time, and also it's, you know, our way into Red Pill.
Yeah.
So many more people when that comes out on Netflix and DVD on the 7th of March. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be like Operation Infiltration into the mainstream consciousness, because, you know, we've all got people that we can say, listen, I need you to sit down for an hour and 27 minutes or whatever it is and watch something for me. And it's so effective in spreading the message to people who are uninitiated and,
Yeah.
you know, people who you might be struggling to get the message across to for whatever reason. You know, like your friends and family who see you posting on YouTube, on Facebook and whatever, and think like, I just don't understand why Elizabeth's so angry
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, you know. It's great.
Nice. Yeah, I'm excited for the Red Pill coming to Netflix. Last I saw, Cassie J said if she can get 50 more pre-orders for the DVD rental, it will be put on the Netflix live stream. So if you guys haven't done it yet and you want to see the Red Pill movie on Netflix live stream, which basically would mean it would be available to everyone that has a Netflix account, which is what I think is far, far more preferable than just letting people rent it on DVD. Then consider doing that. I've already done it myself, even though I don't need the DVD because I've seen the movie like 5 times after all of the screenings I've been to, and I've already have it on order on DVD for my own home copy. But I do want to see it get to Netflix. So, and Cassie J is a classy bae, and we want to see her succeed. So, how about recent events? Have you been to any recent events in the UK?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not so long ago. International Men's Day wasn't that long ago, was it? And we had a good march then and watched the film. Then there was a screening of The Red Pill in Norwich that Cassie and Paul Elam and Erin Pizzey and Mike Buchanan and a couple of feminists were at, and Randa McCann. And then there was our debate last Tuesday.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about this debate. I just knew that one had happened. So what was the topic of the debate? What was the main sort of focus?
It was at Bath University, and it was called "The House Says Feminism is Outdated." So they got in touch with Women Against Feminism, and Natty, who you know, that's Natoya Raymond, who's also a Liberty Bell, is one of the admins for the Women Against Against Feminism.
Facebook against feminism? Oh, women against Facebook against
Women
feminism?
Against Facebook, yeah.
It is really,
I've had too much coffee.
it is women against Facebook when you think about it. Thanks, Zuckerberg.
It is actually, yeah, it is. The Women Against Feminism, she's an admin for the Women Against Feminism page. So she intercepted this message from Bath Uni and got me, her, and another Liberty Bell called Belinda Brown, who also writes for Conservative Women, onto the panel. And we got there and, we were expecting it to be a very sort of pro-feminist audience being at university, and it was. We had a vote taken before and after the debate, and there was no change, but the results were 12 people were for the motion that feminism is outdated, 6 abstained, and 110 were against the motion.
Ooh.
Okay. But it was interesting and it was fun, and we'll be doing it again.
There you go.
And although we sort of were absolutely annihilated in the vote.
Do you think? Well, but the thing is,
we had a couple of students. We've had a couple of students who've come and said, actually, I think you're right, and I've been talking to a young lady on Facebook and stuff like that. And so those, even if you can just reach, 3 people, that can be quite important. And these are people at university, so you don't know what they're going to go on to do.
Absolutely.
They could be influential.
Well, that was actually what I was wondering. Despite the fact that you got killed on the votes, what I'm curious about is, in your mind, do you think that you guys made, better arguments? Because a lot of times the thing is, when I see feminist debate, there is very little in terms of arguments, and there's just the repeat of, several studies that have been debunked multiple times. The usual statistics come flying out, the 77 cents, the 1 in 5, whatever. And there's a lot of sophistry, which is very effective on people emotionally. When you talk about, when you basically are, when your job is to paint women as victims forever and men as oppressors forever, this is actually a very appealing idea, but it's not a factual one. Do you guys think that you guys made the better arguments despite the fact that you may have gotten killed on the votes?
Yeah, of course we did, naturally, because, we were on the side of right. I think that, it was our first debate, or I think Belinda's done like 1 or 2 before. And I think that you know, we didn't have a flawless performance. And I personally found that I'm actually quite shy and unassertive. So in a context like this, I'm okay because you're making space for me to speak, but I find it very difficult to interject into conversations. So there are things that I wish I'd said that I'm kind of kicking myself that I didn't kind of make that
Yeah.
space for myself, that I think would have sort of bolstered our case.
Sounds like you
But-
needed to get bossy.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know if that debate, even despite everything, is there a way, like if it was filmed or taped or recorded or anything, would there be like some way for people to watch it?
It's been filmed twice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been filmed by someone that was with us, and it's also been filmed by the university. And Ewan, who filmed it for us, he's fucked off to Nepal. So I don't think we're going to see it from him anytime soon. But the university should probably have it up in the not too distant future.
Okay.
Can I just get in here because I got to get going and to do the logistics with the Washington D.C. the Red Pill showing in Washington D.C. I just wanted to thank Elizabeth again, and somebody requested that Austin Green said make Elizabeth an honorary honey badger. So insofar as there's any sort of criteria, like oh god.
Well, Elizabeth, get down on one knee. Allison, get the sword, put it on the right shoulder, and then the left shoulder, and then you say you are hereby, made into an
Summarily,
honorary hunter.
created into the category of badger. If you wish to be. If you don't, then I accept your lack of enthusiastic consent. Okay.
Everybody wants to be a badger, don't they?
Yes.
That's like the thing to be.
You gotta take the oath.
Thank you, Austin Green.
Yeah. You just gotta take the oath. We'll write it up at some point, but I'm sure it'll have a lot of Old English in it. So, thanks, Allison. Are you there, or did you leave? Allison fucked
She's
off.
gone.
Okay.
She's gone. Yeah.
Fine. Okay. So we're getting close to the end, anyways. Let's see. I just wanted to ask. What do you hope to do in the future? Like, I know that this might have been something that just kind of came out of nowhere for you. But now that you're in the trenches with us, what are your personal goals, short term and long term? What are you hoping to achieve?
Well, I simply want to change the world.
Yeah, so no big deal. It's just like
Yeah.
us. That's not lofty or anything.
Exactly. And in order to achieve this modest aim, I want to be doing more debates. So, I want to get into universities, especially, and reach the people who are reachable and who are, going to go into jobs that are going to affect other people's lives. I mean, if you talk to someone who's going to be a future teacher, that could really impact on all of their students,
Yeah.
If you talk to someone who's going to go into the civil service, that could be the difference between, someone going in and ripping a family apart because they've got an ideological bias against men, and actually helping a family.
Yeah.
And I'm going to carry on making videos with Studio Brûlée.
We're looking forward to it.
Go from strength to strength, and keep networking and making friends, because there's so many good people in our movement. There
are. I made a lot of friends from various parts of the world. I'm very grateful for it too.
And I certainly want to see male circumcision, infant male circumcision, history. Yeah, I'd love to see that in my lifetime.
Do you think that's the most important men's issue to start off with?
I think probably the most important to me would be fathers' rights, which are really children's rights. So I would like to see, an assumption of 50-50 shared parenting in family courts. But I think for me, the circumcision thing is important because I feel that it kind of dehumanizes men from birth, and it kind of is a platform on which all these other prejudicial kind of behaviors can grow on, and it's an affront to the non-aggression principle, which is obviously important to me as a libertarian.
It's important to me too. This is good. I like that you said that. Okay. So yeah, I think that circumcision is, it may not necessarily be the most important, but I think it is the most fundamental men's issue that is the most difficult for feminists, or anyone for that matter, to make an argument against. So if you wanted to start the discussion about men's issues, you got to select one that is the most, I think, the most valid. And and I think father's rights is, more important, in my opinion. So I agree with you on that. I think that if a family needs a father in the home, but if you want to change, like get people on board, and you really want to show how valid men's issues is, you start with circumcision. It's difficult to deny. Women will sympathize with this as well as men, because there are men who have been circumcised that are having issues and they don't know why, and there are women who want to have children someday, and they may have sons. So it's the most effective. I think that for that reason, it's the one that should be talked about. There's actually a great documentary that I was introduced to when I was at the ICMI, made by a gay man who, it was all about circumcision. And I got to find it. I don't know if it's been released yet or not, but I've got to find it, and I'll let you guys know what the title is when I remember. I have to go look it up, and I'll put it in the low bar. Anyway, that's what I think about circumcision. I think it's vitally important to sort of creating more awareness around men's issues, and then when people come here, they'll learn about all the other things like suicide, homelessness, and the problems with conscription, and male health issues, male mental health issues, fathers' rights, and so on. So, all right. So last questions. I have two more for you. These are extremely important. Okay. Pineapple on your pizza or no?
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
She has pineapple on her pizza, guys. So that's just so you know. And if you have a steak, are you a vegetarian?
I was a vegetarian for 13 years, but when I became pregnant with my eldest, my partner was like, "You're going to eat meat because you need protein, and you're going to eat it now." And I haven't looked back. So yes, steak. I love a steak.
Okay, steak. How do you like it though? Do you like it done with ketchup, or just another way?
No ketchup. No ketchup. Kind of medium.
Medium.
It feels like a bit of a cop-out as an answer, but it's true.
No, I like it medium rare. But some people like it well done with ketchup. I'm not saying they're Nazis, but I think it's fucked up. Okay. So anyway.
It is. It's a bit concerning, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. I'm getting a little triggered by that. All right. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up the Fireside Chat. I want to thank you, Elizabeth, for coming on. It was a pleasure. I didn't actually have to look at my notes very much, which is the sign of a good interview. So maybe we can have you on as a guest on one of our other shows someday. Guys, if you're watching, tell me what you think, and show some love to Elizabeth in the comments. Meanwhile, we're going to let you guys go because I got other shit I got to do. Thanks, Elizabeth, and have a good evening. Say hello to your kids and your partner. All right.
Will do.